Along with right mindfulness and right concentration or samadhi, right effort is the mental discipline or concentration aspect of the Eightfold Path. The other related limbs are mindfulness and concentration, or samadhi. When a proper relationship is maintained among these last three limbs of right concentration, enlightenment can blossom. Now, the first thing the student needs in order to maintain right effort is energy, or vayama in Pali. Energy is at the service of right effort. This is an essential factor that cannot be overlooked. Many people in the modern age are constantly tired from their busy and stressful lifestyles, which tend to include overconsumption of coffee and energy drinks. These stimulants are more often than not draining us of zeal and endurance, and making our blood sugar levels irregular, so we become tired very easily after a dose of caffeine. For all of us, it's best to keep our caffeine intake in our functional minimum. Ideally, we shouldn't be drinking more than 2 cups of coffee a day because of the effect it has on the liver and adrenal glands, which actually play a major role in clairvoyance. However, those of us who cannot stay awake during the day simply have to supplement with some coffee or tea. The Buddha also gave his classical advice for inspiring and gathering energy, which included things like splashing cold water on the face, walking out in the snow and bare feet, or otherwise a cold environment, and a few others. If you're someone who falls asleep easily, it's best to meditate whilst sitting upright, as opposed to laying reclined or flat on your back. And on the other hand, when we find ourselves restless due to agitation or anxiety, we can use up some excess energy by exercising and turning to walking meditations before sitting back down for classic sitting meditation. Serenity meditations are effective for letting go of agitation and allowing the mind to sink deeper into itself. Energy fuels willpower or concentration, so the mind is not dull when one has sufficient energy. In addition to these basic adjustments, more advanced and specialized practices for gathering and managing energy should be practiced daily. These include pranayama, mantras, qigong, tai chi, hatha yoga, and the highest practice of Buddhism, Tantra. The 4 right efforts are active exercises that one must implement in order to attenuate and eliminate the 5 hindrances, which are sensual desire or greed, ill will or anger, laziness and fatigue, restlessness and worry, and doubt. The first right effort is anupadaya, which means prevention of unwholesome mental states. The primary practice for this is mindfulness. This is part of the way of the middle path. One must walk through life without the biases and misperceptions that arise from personal preference and taste. The Buddha, after all, taught not to let one's perspective distort in such a way that the sign of the beautiful or the ugly emerges. His term sign essentially means interpretation. It refers to the common misperceptions and misconceptions that people create around things that are either pleasing or repulsive. This way of viewing things as either good or bad, beautiful or ugly, is in fact delusional, because only someone who does not recognize the impermanent and insubstantial nature of all things in existence would perceive everything with that kind of divisive labeling, the kind of labeling that makes things seem different and separate when really they are the same and insubstantial. So the solution is to learn to see things as they are, to never let your perspective of things become distorted by passion or aversion. The way this looks in practice is moment-to-moment self-observation throughout the day. As soon as we become triggered or enticed by something, we have to stay present and stop ourselves from creating any judgments, fantasies, or labels in our mind. We don't need to compare and label things all the time, because that is precisely what daily meditation is for. Meditation is what provides us with the right understanding of things, problems, situations, perspectives. This trains the mind to be still and civilized like a real human being. The more we restrain the 5 hindrances, the more our psychology changes and evolves to the human level. As we are right now, psychologically, we are animals. We have passion. We experience intense desire. We react. We get angry. We can become aggressive. We have lust. This is not human nature. This is animal nature. It may seem very restricting to never let yourself indulge in desires in this practice, but on the positive side of desire is a deep serenity that comes from being unattached and untroubled by the world around. The second right effort is vayama, spelt with a P. The removal of unskillful qualities that have arisen. Buddhism has traditionally taught a few different methods for removing the hindrances. The first method is to replace negative qualities with virtues. The Buddha uses a simile that involves the assembly of wooden chairs to describe this practice. In the simile, a carpenter initially assembles a chair with coarse wooden pegs, before tapping them out and replacing them with refined pegs for the final model. This means finding ways of boosting our mood when we are down, or mustering selflessness, joy, and compassionate love when we are angry. For desire, the solution is the cultivation of non-attachment and contentment. One practice that can be effective is to recognize how ordinary and common and indistinct something is compared to other similar things. This can help de-glamorize a desire when we feel unreasonably attached to something that seems rare and unique and special, but is actually quite common and ordinary. Another practice is to utilize repulsiveness in order to become discouraged from a desire. Meditating on the consequences of a desire is one of the best ways to obtain this kind of comprehension. Restlessness and worry is attenuated through serenity meditation. Laziness can be overcome by meditating on its consequences. Doubt can be overcome with serenity and insight meditation, and other forms of investigation. Another more universal method is reflection on impermanence, which is an effective exercise for all of the hindrances. If these two exercises are not effective, the next method involves fear and shame. This means that by studying the Dhamma and receiving comprehensions in meditation, the appropriate amount of concern for certain bad habits and desires should arise and inspire a high regard for your safety and well-being. With regards to shame, if you care about your own dignity, then you will only continue to feel remorse or shame every time you make the mistake by feeding that bad habit. The next strategy is distraction. It's a good idea to find various ways of distracting yourself every time you think about entertaining one of the hindrances. Sometimes it's okay to turn to less severe bad habits in order to distract yourself from the very serious ones. It's sometimes okay to go out and buy ice cream for yourself, if that's what will lighten up your mood and take your mind off your anger. The next practice is the gradual method. The fact that a student has to resort to the gradual method means that they are dealing with a very strong hindrance and a more serious addiction. The practice is simply to find a way of gradually reducing the frequency and intensity of the habit day by day or week by week. This is something the student can't give up all at once because they will either have ongoing triggers or cravings that distract them throughout the day, or they will experience various withdrawal symptoms that can make the other hindrances break out more frequently. The last method for eliminating hindrances is suppression. This is more of a regular side practice that students should incorporate with the other methods. It is simply important to be able to hold your tongue and teeth together whenever you feel triggered, so you don't say the wrong thing or express anger. Now, this is not an absolute method. It is something you just practice throughout your day in order to remain civilized around others until you have that time for yourself to transmute the emotions or impressions through the things like Qigong, yoga, and especially meditation. The Buddha understood that suppressing negative emotions is in fact better than letting the expression of passion run freely and uncontrollably. The hindrances are very harmful and require rigorous mental restraint in order to train the mind to be still. The third right effort is called upadaya. This is the cultivation of wholesome mental states or virtues. This stage of right effort means that the student has spent some time training their mindfulness and investigation. They've been conserving and gathering their vital forces by maintaining brahmacharya, or sexual purity. They've been learning to let go of things that used to fascinate or trigger them, and are now beginning to feel enlivened with energy and presence. This is the way to increase joy. This can be felt in both the body and the mind. You may feel all the tension in your body subside. You may feel that you have more stamina, and you will have a greater ongoing sense of clarity, enthusiasm, and curiosity. When this is developed over time, enthusiasm and joy begin to settle and tranquility blossoms. When this wholesome state is further sustained and deepened, samadhi can be experienced. This is the final factor of the eightfold path. Samadhi is the deepest absorption and stillness of consciousness within itself. It is an extraordinary suffusion of well-being and happiness that is free of mental attachment. This is a suprahuman mental state. It requires the suprahuman efforts explained here. Samadhi in itself does not indicate that one is enlightened, however, until it becomes the natural and permanent state of a consciousness, your consciousness, due to the complete liberation from egoic conditioning. The fourth and final right effort is titya. This refers to the maintaining of wholesome mental states. This is the ability to maintain equanimity, which in this context is a beautiful and perfect balance in the mind. Upekkha is the umbrella term for these kinds of mental states. It is the profound and unattached observation of the jhanas and samadhi. Unattached simply means undisturbed. It doesn't mean that there is no concern for others. In fact, these high states of consciousness provide the mind with a greater capacity for compassion. These states of mind arise from the infusion of deep concentration or absorption and wisdom. They will arise after some time training in the four right efforts, which include time spent in solitude during meditation.